Hi everyone, it's Gina K from Gina K Designs and your host of Stamp TV. And today on Stamp TV, I'm going to show you a fun card project featuring the new Wise Old Owl stamp set. This stamp set is awesome for masculine cards, and it's also great for kids cards or any card where you want to send someone a little bit of encouragement or gratitude. Let me show you the tools and products that you're going to need to make this card project. First, you're going to need some ink. And the ink pads that I'm using are the Gina K Designs Charcoal Brown, some Turquoise Sea, and some Kraft. And then I'm also going to be using a Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad because I'm going to be doing a little bit of Copic coloring. Now the Copic markers that I'm going to be using are the colorless blender pen. I'm also going to be using BG45, which is Nile Blue. I'm going to be using E35, which is chamois, and E55, which is light camel. I'm also going to be using this fun little tape runner by ThermoWeb, and I love this one. This is the sticky dot runner. This is such a great little tape runner, and you see me use it all the time. I'm also going to use some foam squares, and then I'm going to be using some dies. I'm going to use the Wise Old Owl die set, and then I'm going to use my double-stitched ovals and single-stitched ovals. These are the dies that I designed for ThermoWeb, and they work great with the Foil Mates line, but they also work great for any kind of card making. The stamp set is the Wise Old Owl stamp set. Let me grab a piece of white cardstock to get behind this so you can see it a little better. So here are all those cute little owls, and I'm going to be using 3 of the owls for this card, along with the greeting that says, "Thanks for all you do." Then for cardstock, I'm going to be using some of the Gina K Designs Layering Weight White along with some of the Kraft cardstock and a Turquoise Sea Card Base. And then I've cut a couple little pieces here for my greeting. I'm also going to be using my Scor-Buddy, and I'm going to do that for some wood graining. And then I also have my Misti, which I'll be bringing out in just a little bit. So, to begin, I'm going to start with some Kraft cardstock. Now, I usually use white cardstock for wood graining, but the Kraft cardstock looks really nice too, and so I'm going to be using that today. So I have 2 pieces here. This piece I'm not going to texturize. This is a little bit smaller, and this is the bigger one that I am going to create some score lines. So this piece measures 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, and I'm going to score this on the 1/4 inch marks going all the way down. So I'm going to start at the 3 1/2 inch mark and create a score line. Then I'm going to go down to 3 1/4, 3, 2 3/4, and I'm going to keep going all the way down on those 1/4 inch marks to add kind of like planks of wood. And you'll see how that looks when I add the ink on top. Now this is a little bit more subtle than using white cardstock or ivory cardstock because you're already starting with a little bit of a brown color. Alright, so that's done. Now I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper here, and I'm going to grab my ink. I've got this charcoal brown, I've got some Kraft, and I have a little bit of Turquoise Sea. I'm going to start with the Kraft, and I'm going to rub this down the entire surface of the card. And you can see that that looks a lot darker, but believe it or not, once this dries, it's going to dry very subtle. So I'm going to need to add a little bit of a darker brown in there too. So that's where my charcoal brown comes in. I'm going to use some of that just on top. And I like to kind of put lines in by kind of like leaning a little bit on it here and there, kind of like getting this little edge on there. Just kind of makes it look a little bit more authentic. Okay. And then I'm going to let that dry for just a second, and I'm going to go to this smaller piece. And I'm going to do the same 2 colors on this, starting with the Kraft. I'm going to drag that down. And you'll see why I'm doing this a little bit differently than I usually do. But you can see when you add those little lines, you kind of have built-in plank marks. And that's just from angling it a little bit over that straight edge. So I'm doing this now. Same thing with the charcoal brown. And so there is my second piece. Now I'm going to go back over this first piece with a little bit of turquoise sea. Not a lot, but just a little bit to add a little bit of a different hue in there. You can kind of see how that looks. You might be able to see it a little bit better on the picture. So if you're watching this video over at YouTube, you could stop by Stamp TV. It's stamptv.com, and you could find the video there, or right on the home page. There'll be a picture of this today, and you'll be able to see it a little more close up. Sometimes it's a little hard to pick it up on the screen, but you should be able to see some of that turquoise in there. Okay, so I'm going to put these two pieces aside to dry, and while that's happening, I'm going to grab my Misti stamping tool. Now, I already have the Misti loaded up with some stamps, and I didn't really do any particular type of layout here. I just put the 3 owls that I want to use on the bottom of the Misti, and then I have a piece of cardstock in here that I'm going to secure with the magnets. And then I'm just going to make sure the magnet's not under there, and it's not. And I'm going to ink these up using some Memento Tuxedo black ink. Now, whenever you're inking new stamps up, and these are pretty new stamps, I always give it a little bit of extra ink, and I always try them once or twice on some scrap paper first. There is a little coating of stuff on good high-quality photopolymer stamps that comes from the manufacturing process, and you can either rub it off real well with a scrubber or an eraser, or you can just stamp it a few times first, and once that's all gone, then you're going to get great impressions every time. So there, you can see I got some pretty good impressions there of those owls. So those are ready to color. So I'm going to put my Misti aside, and I'm going to grab those Copic markers. And I've got those right here. And I'm going to try to come in just a little closer so you can see. Now, I'm not going to be doing any fancy coloring. I'm no Copic coloring expert, but I do want to show you how I'm going to color these little owls. So I'm going to start with the darker marker, and I'm going to color their bodies in this darker color. So bear with me, this might take a little longer than usual because there are 3 of them to color. But I want to color the darker one. You can see I'm kind of going outside of the lines, but that's okay. I'm going to add a little turquoise in there, and it'll all look nice together. Okay, so I've got his body done. I'm going to do this one. And then I'm going to add a little bit of texture into these using my colorless blender. I really like adding the texture. I think it's fun and it's whimsical. And it's just a little bit different than just coloring with shading. So you can see I'm finishing up here, his little body. And then I'm going to go and do his body. Oh, he's got a big body. And I'm just coloring, no particular way. People always ask me, though, when I send my cards out and I've done this little bit of texturizing, they always ask me, how did you do that? How did you get that texture in there? And it's really so easy. I know you guys can do it. It's super easy. And you'll see. And again, because I'm no expert, I kind of like these very easy techniques that make your cards look different and interesting, but really don't require a lot of skill. Card making is meant to be fun, and although it's very fun to learn how to color and shade and all of that, sometimes if you need a fast card, you can a fast card, you can have a lot of fun doing it this way too. So now I'm going to grab this lighter marker. This is the E55, and I'm going to add just a little bit of this lighter one up here. It's not a terribly different color, but it's just enough so that you can see that this one's a little bit darker. So I'll add that there, and then I think I'll do his little feathers up here. I'm going to leave the rest of that turquoise, and I think well, I'll do his head in the lighter color here. Okay, so now, before I get started on the next part with the turquoise, I am going to use that colorless blender. Now, I like to use the chisel end for this because it gives you a nice sharp line. So I'm going to start doing some little lines going across. And you can kind of see those little lines coming out. They almost make him look a little wood-grained. Then I'm going to go back the opposite way. So I'm kind of creating a little check pattern on his little body. So you can see that. And I'm not worried about going outside of the lines. I'm going to cut these out anyway, but you can see that. I'm going to do the same thing on this guy. And by using the chisel end, and I never knew what to use the chisel end for. I'm not a big chisel end person, so this is kind of a fun way to use that, and you'll be glad you have it. You can see he's got like a little plaid body there now. Same thing with this guy. The same thing up here. And then I'm going to crisscross the other way. You can't see this one quite as much because he's got a lot of texture on his belly there, but when you look up close you'll be able to see it, and I don't know if I can bring that any closer, but there you go. You can kind of see the little texture there. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more of that lighter brown, and that was the 55 to this one's head up here, this part. Forgot about that. But I didn't really intend to texturize that anyway, so that's kind of fun. And then we're going to add the unexpected color, that turquoise sea-ish color. This is the Nile Blue, the BG45. It's a really nice match for the Gina K Designs Turquoise Sea ink and cardstock. So we're going to give him blue rims around his big eyes, and we're going to color his little ears up here. I don't know if you guys had a chance to be at our release party, but we had so many fun cards at our release party using this stamp set. So if you get a chance, head over to Stamp TV and check out the featured gallery. That is full of our design team's projects that they did for this release, and there are some really fun ways to use this set. Okay, so now I have the turquoise sea there. For this one, I'm going to try to pretend that the dotted line is actually a solid line and not go past it, so I can add some blue to his eyes. But you know what, if I go past it, it's okay. Just leave a little bit of white there, and we'll do his little wings. I think these are just really fun images. And owls are so popular, especially as we get closer to autumn. So this is one of those sets that's going to stay on your craft room table for a while. And we've got some really cute autumn stamp sets from the past that also have tree branches and leaves and things like that. So you can always mix and match these in with some of those branches and have these little guys sitting on some of those. All right, one more wing, and then we're going to be ready to start making some card magic. All right, so now I have those little guys colored, and they're fun. I think I've been kind of in a boho mood lately. All my projects have a little turquoise, and they all have a little boho feel to them. Okay, so now for my next step, I'm going to grab the Sizzix machine, and we're going to do a little bit of cutting. So I have the new magnetic plate, and I really like it. It's been working very well for me. So I have the magnetic plate, and then I have a clear plate, and then I have my designs, and I'm going to grab some of these little dies and just put them in place here. So there's one. And this one's so funny. Look at those big eyes. And then the last one over here. Now, of course, if you have a different die cutting machine, it's totally fine. You don't have to run out and buy anything. If you've got a Cuttlebug or any of the other machines, they will all work with these images and these dies. So now I'm going to slip that top plate on there, kind of put a little pressure, and send it through the machine. All right. So here's one little guy, here's another one, and there is that last one. Now that we've cut out all the owls, I'm going to show you how we're going to lay this out, and we're going to do some more die cutting. So here I have my piece of scored and wood grained cardstock, and I'm going to start with one of the single stitched ovals. Now the thing that's really cool about these dies is the single stitched ovals are 1/8 of an inch bigger than the double stitched ovals, which allows you to do some fun layering techniques. So I'm going to use the bigger one first, which is the single stitched, and I'm going to position that right in the middle but toward the top of the card. And before I actually cut, I want to grab my little piece of cardstock and make sure there's a little bit of room there. Yeah, that's kind of where I want it to come up into the oval area. So that looks good. So maybe I'll go just a little lower, since I'm going to kind of position that over the oval. Okay, so I have that in place, and now I'm going to cut. Let me move it down just a hair more. I'm going to cut that out using that single stitched oval. All right. Now I'm going to pull that oval out here, and then I'm going to grab this piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to layer these together. All right, let me turn that over and show you what this looks like. So I'm going to layer that together. So this piece of cardstock is just 1/8 of an inch bigger all the way around. This is 3 3/4 by 5. This is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. So it's just 1/8 of an inch bigger. And I'm going to mount those together. All right. Let me get that lined up. Okay, so that looks good. So now you can see I have that on there. Now, the next step is going to be to cut out another oval on the inside, and I'm going to use the coordinating one from the double stitched one. So I use the middle one from the single stitch set. I'm going to use the double one from the middle one from the double stitched set. I'm going to lay that right in the middle there. And I'm going to create a white border. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, and now I'm going to cut that out. And you can save these pieces that you cut out from inside the center for another project. So that's a great double-stitched oval ready to use for my next card. This is a great wood-grained oval, and I can even put those together, and you can see how they layer nicely. But for now, I'm going to use this little window that I just created with my little white border in there for my card. All right, so let me get the big shot out of the way. And now it's time to assemble this card. So my first step is to take that plain wood grained piece and lay that down onto my Turquoise Sea Card Base. So I will grab a little bit of that thermal web adhesive and get that laying down on there like that. And now you can see this is making a hole, but you're looking at wood inside too, so that's kind of fun. All right, now we're going to decide how we want these little guys to look. So I'm going to have them peeking from inside. So these guys are inside the tree, like this, and then the other guy will be on the outside. So let's start with this one. We'll get him taped down. Let's look at that again. Make sure he looks right. We want him up there pretty high. Okay, so he's peeking out from there. And then this guy, we want him peeking out from here, and then we'll put this one on the outside. He's standing watch. Okay, so let's tape right there, get a little tape, and we'll get him into position. All right, so now we have those two. Now we're going to put this whole piece down using some foam squares, and that's going to help secure these guys too. So I've got foam squares all over the place for this card. And we're going to put one on each owl, and that will lock them in position. I love popping things up, but what's fun about this layout is you don't have to worry. It's not going to cost extra to mail it because you really don't have any heavy embellishments. This is going to still be flat enough to go through a machine, so you won't have to worry about that. But it still has lots of interest because you do have things popped up and it looks very, very three-dimensional. Okay, so now I'm going to lay this, and this is going to require me to really get over it here. I'm going to lay that right there. It looks good. Press all those foam squares down. So now you can see it's got a lot of dimension, and there they are looking out. And now this guy we're going to put on here. I'll just tape him right on there, so I'll add a little bit of tape to his body right there. We'll just tape him right there. Okay, so now we need a greeting, and this greeting is going to go, let's move him. I want to move him a little bit over. Give us room for the greeting, because that greeting is going to go there. And I'm going to attach these two pieces. Boy, I have a lot of confidence right now that I'm going to stamp this straight the first time. So I'm going to actually adhere them together before I stamp it. If not, I'll have to flip it around. All right, and then I'm going to use the Thanks for All You Do stamp and some of that charcoal brown ink. Make sure that's nice and inky, and then stamp. There we go. Thanks for all you do. And then I'm going to adhere that right onto my card. I'll just slip it in there on an angle, just like that. So there is my finished card project. Now I want to show you the first card that I did. I did one where I didn't do the score lines first, and I think the score lines are huge. They add so much. So you can see what it would look like if you just did the plain wood graining on both the front panel and that one behind it, or if you add those score lines to make it look a little bit brighter and a little bit more fun and playful. So those are two finished cards using the new Wise Old Owl stamp set. I hope you've enjoyed today's Stamp TV video. Stay tuned to Stamp TV for more projects. Don't forget to subscribe if you're watching me on YouTube, and thanks so much for watching.